Well, hey, everyone, and welcome to episode number 32 of the Other Six podcast. My name is Chad Boak, and I am your host. Joining me in the studio once again, my co-host and our worship pastor and the author of the Star Wars-themed equestrian guide entitled, May the Horse Be With You, Mr. Matt Collins. Matt, how are you today, sir?
I don't know. I don't know that much about Star Wars, man. I didn't know.
But you do know about horse riding, yeah?
I guess so.
Absolutely. Yeah. And joining us in the studio once again, our lead pastor, Mr. Adam Bishop. Adam, how are you today, sir?
I'm just trying to. Is there like a website you go to that has all of these random
is all
things?
in his head.
Do you
man.
really come up with these every week?
Yeah.
Do you do anything else around here?
Right.
Like how long does it take you to come up with that?
From what I understand, the puns are worth it.
Do you guys like riding horses? Since you brought it up,
it's been years since I've done that.
I've never rode a horse.
Oh,
I've only done it a couple times.
So Dee used to ride them competitively.
Oh, really?
Come on.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
yeah.
Now
There's different
now we got a new
styles.
subject for the
Absolutely.
podcast.
Yeah.
So
Did she like jump things? Don't they jump?
I don't.
fences?
I think there's
something
different
like that.
styles.
They do
but I
barrel
don't,
racing. Did she like barrel race?
I don't know. Man.
Dee's gonna be on the podcast.
Yeah, we got to bring
next
Dee
week.
on
I don't-
here. Yeah.
So this house we bought.
Sorry, Dee.
They were big horse people.
Okay.
So I've got like a horse. What do you call it where they live?
A barn?
Stable?
Yeah.
Stable?
So I've got
Yeah, that's probably
like
right.
3 stables.
I got one.
Like not a stable like Mary and Joseph stable,
Right,
but
right.
like a horse could live there. And they
Yeah.
had they barrel raced.
Okay.
So
Do y'all have barrels?
No, they took all that with them.
Oh.
But I've only ridden a horse a couple times, and I was pretty nervous.
Yeah.
It's a big
You're
animal.
on this big animal, and people who do it well, they make it look really simple.
Right, but like accidents can definitely happen. I mean, like you hear stories about that,
yeah,
right?
it can be
Superman.
dangerous if you
Yeah.
don't know what you're doing.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
horses have awesome personalities,
Yeah.
So, anywho, you brought up horses,
Yeah,
so I
this is
figured
true.
I would ask about.
No,
if
I don't know
anybody
anything.
out there listening knows some things about horses, let us know.
That's
Yeah.
right.
We're,
Yeah.
we're
Comments.
interested in learning more.
That's
Emails.
right. Absolutely. That'd be
much
great.
appreciated.
Now, I want to start a new segment on our podcast,
Oh
Adam.
my
I'm putting you on the spot just a little bit here. And the title
I knew
of
this was coming, by the
this
way.
You didn't tell
segment-
me?
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's a surprise. The title of the segment is, what is the sports significance of today's podcast number? So we're number 32. And
Come on, I know that-
and I know
I
that
got
there's
one.
some sort of sports significance.
Do you have
going
an
on.
answer?
I'm gonna let you go first because I might take it.
I'm so intrigued to know what Matt's
Absolutely.
is.
Well, it's not going to be football. I know that. But go. Yeah.
No, I mean the first 32 that pops to mind is none other than Irvin Magic Johnson.
That's
Okay.
that's the one.
Okay,
that's it.
all right,
That was
good.
it.
Look at you guys
Yeah,
on the
good
same
job.
page.
So 6'10" point guard out of Michigan State, Chad. We just had never seen that before, the point guard position.
Right.
Now I can do a breakdown of
See,
Magic's
I
career,
didn't know
but I
any
won't
of
do
that,
that.
but I
All
knew
right,
the
so
number.
quick little Magic Johnson history. So
Sure.
when Magic Johnson and Larry Bird entered the NBA had become such a backseat sport in America that they would show the NBA finals on tape delay.
You were kidding.
No, the
Wow.
TV ratings were so terrible that you would watch the championship finals after your 11 o'clock news on tape delay.
What year was this?
This would have been 80, 79, 80.
Wow.
So Magic and Larry Bird play against each other in the national championship in college basketball.
Okay.
And that's when everybody sees these two guys. They're like unbelievable. They come in the league at the same time. And then in the 1980s, so here we go. You brought this up, not me.
Yep, here
In
we
the
go.
It's a new
1980s,
segment. We
there
had
was
to.
never an NBA Finals without either the Celtics or the Lakers in the NBA Finals
They were
for that
just
entire
that
decade.
dominating.
Yeah, so they
Okay.
brought basketball back.
Wow.
And so obviously when Jordan gets drafted, he kind of took it global.
Sure.
But if not for Magic and Larry, I don't know,
Did
the
y'all
NBA was not headed in a good direction.
Right.
So,
Did y'all watch The Last Dance?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Are you
All right.
kidding me?
Yeah, I haven't seen
But the cool thing was to wear Converse, but Jordan was like, "I'll take Nike."
Yeah.
Okay.
So Converse was worn by Larry Bird, Magic Johnson,
Yeah.
all of them. And that's what Jordan wanted.
Okay.
And they didn't
They're
want
like,
him.
nah.
And there was this small company out in Oregon that did track shoes
Okay.
called Nike.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And they wanted to fly him in, and he didn't want to go. And his mom made
his
him
mom-
go. His mom was
Look
like,
at Mom
hey,
go.
She said, "Hey, just do it."
she said, she said, you're gonna go. You're gonna follow through.
That
You
was
gave
good.
them your word. They
Yeah.
showed the footage on The Last Dance of when he arrived. It was like a banner that somebody at the last second had thought like, oh, we better welcome him. It's like handwritten,
Yeah, yeah,
welcome
yeah.
Michael Jordan. It's
Right.
hanging
Yeah,
up
yeah.
on this building. It
'Cause they
looks
didn't think
like
he was gonna come,
the
man.
most backwards outfit ever, and
Right.
like this is Nike's headquarters.
Wow.
And needless to say, Converse made a really bad mistake.
Yeah,
No
yeah.
kidding. My
yeah.
goodness.
Look at Jordans now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jordans now, which I talked about Jordans yesterday.
You got
That's
a
right.
nice pair.
You did.
So I did. The worship team hooked
That's
me
right.
up
Yeah.
with those Jordans.
Yeah, that's all right. So that's kind of a neat story. We got to tell that story real quick for anyone that doesn't know it about the Christmas present of the Air
Yeah.
Jordans.
So
Jordans.
Tom Moore, Jeff Qualio, Who else was in on that conversation? A bunch of us. You were there too. Yeah, we actually introduced Matt to this whole idea called basketball and Michael Jordan.
I bought my own after this.
I'm just picking on that. I'm super impressed about the Magic Johnson that you were already tracking with me at 32.
I Googled it.
So we talked about Air Jordans. This has been a while ago, backstage, and because Tom has like some pretty sweet.
Oh,
He
yeah,
has so many.
Yeah.
And so
For those of you that don't know Tom, he plays guitar for it.
I brought up the Air Jordan Series 4 and talked about how those were my favorite ones growing up as a kid. I never thought anything about it again. Well, for Christmas that year, they bought me an Air Jordan 4, a pair of them. So I wore them back in July when I did a God on Film message for Space Jam.
Space Jam.
And so I wore them, and the whole worship team wore them. And what was really funny about that day, like you wore them, everybody on stage had on Jordans. So I said something about it at the beginning of the message, just having some fun.
Yeah.
Well, after the 9:30 service that Sunday, I was talking to this couple in the lobby, and it was their first time at our church. And they were like, yeah, we're really glad you said something, because the whole time we were like, everybody's wearing Jordan. I was like, you thought you joined a cult, right?
That's right,
Like, yeah, we were wondering, this church is weird. I'm like, we're weird, okay.
Right,
but
right.
Yeah,
just
we
for
are
different
weird,
reasons.
Just not like Kool-Aid weird.
Yeah. Just the weird.
Yeah.
So I got to wear my Jordans, but to get personal for a second, like my foot is really wide, so they hurt my feet. So I don't wear them a lot because they hurt my feet, but they're still super cool.
Yeah. Just when the sermon calls for it.
When the Lord
step
moves.
up.
When you're talking about Space Jam, he wears a Jordan.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah, so they're good shoes. But 32. We don't need to do this every week, though. We're going to lose listeners.
We just knew that it would happen anyway.
I could rattle off the next 15 numbers if you wanted me to, but that's ridiculous.
We'll stay with 32 for now.
32 is good, man.
Absolutely.
Magic Johnson.
So you gentlemen have a good weekend. The weather was spectacular this past weekend, right?
Yeah.
This is like
was.
we're in that sweet spot, before it gets too hot, but it's not too cold. It's just kind of great. Although
I think
you have to dodge tornadoes like every week.
Yeah, we get tornadoes. You got to pay attention to that. A little bit of pollen that makes you sneeze a lot. But March, April, and May, and where we live, I don't think you can beat it.
Yeah.
Because I've lived in all four corners of the country. These are the months of the year that you really can tell a difference where you live.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
So, the Masters starts this week, and maybe we could play that little music in the background. So I'm a big fan of the Masters. And you see the beautiful azaleas. We live like in New York. I cut on the Masters, and everything's green, azaleas, and it's like sleeting outside.
Right.
And you're like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. You live out in Denver. We had 15 inches of snow one year, the weekend after Mother's Day.
You're kidding.
No. By that time, you're like, okay, I'm done with the snow, right? So it'll snow into May out there. So you get like April and May here, and it's just beautiful day after day after day. You don't have to deal with any of that terrible weather.
Right.
So if you've only ever lived here, don't take this for granted.
Right.
It's not like this in other parts of the country, but man, it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And the humidity hasn't come in yet. So I've been doing
Not
a lot
yet.
of stuff outside. It's coming.
It's coming.
That's
June,
the,
July,
that's the other side of the coin. But man, this time of year,
that meme, it's coming.
Yeah,
winter's coming.
it's coming.
So
Humidity's
summer's coming.
stay
That's right.
outside as much as you can right now.
absolutely.
Beautiful time of year.
Yeah.
Well, good deal. Well, I guess we'll go ahead and jump into the topic for today. So we continued our message series Replenish this past weekend, and good to have you back in the pulpit. Thank you for the opportunity, letting some of us fill in for a couple of weeks, but it was great to have you back.
Thank you.
And really enjoyed the topic. Now, I do have to talk a little bit about, and we'll talk about more when we get there. I love the video clips. It was great as an Auburn fan, and then I cried as an Auburn fan, and then I kind of
Honestly,
as an
I
Auburn
just
fan.
I walked into soundcheck and they were playing these videos, and I was like, "What is going
Yeah,
on?" Are
that's
y'all
like,
just
why is Celine Dion playing in the auditorium right now?
So if you missed the service, you're completely lost right now. So
that's right.
You go back and watch it. I had some fun with Auburn fans, Alabama fans, and Georgia fans, and it was kind of the idea for the day, which is we need to be a part of something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah.
We understand
so
that.
obviously Celine Dion.
Yeah, we understand that in the South with college football.
That's right.
And if you're not a college football fan, whatever it is that you enjoy, soccer. Hey, our soccer team's actually pretty decent. So the World Cup is in Qatar. Did I say that correctly?
You did.
This summer. So our soccer team is going to be in the World Cup. We missed the last one 4 years ago. And the reason I bring up soccer is when I lived in New York City, the Giants won the Super Bowl when I lived in New York City.
Oh, wow.
You'd have never known.
Really?
New York City is so diverse that there's not really one thing that carries things. So you got theater, you got sports, you got business, and the loudest I've ever heard New York City is during the World Cup.
Oh, yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you have people from all over the
Oh,
world who live
okay.
there.
Yeah.
So you walk down a block and every restaurant,
Yeah.
every bar, it's like, is anybody working today? It's
Yeah,
like, no,
yeah.
they're watching the World
Yeah.
Cup. And so the energy that the World Cup brings on a global scale is a pretty big deal. So that would be another example.
Yeah.
Like being a part of something bigger than yourselves. Like these folks have moved to a place from all over the world, but when they're watching these soccer matches, they're a part of it. They
Yeah.
feel like they're a part of what's
Yeah.
going on. Other interesting thing about New York City, if you're a fan of an SEC football team, every Saturday there's a part of Manhattan where there's, like a whole road of nothing but like bars. And when I say bars, restaurants with
Sure.
bars, you wouldn't feel uncomfortable going in there. It's not like
Right.
a bad part of town or anything. But every college and the SEC has a designated bar.
Really?
So you can
Really?
walk down a
Wow.
street. There's Auburn fans, Alabama fans,
Wow.
Georgia fans, LSU.
In
and
New York?
all of the graduates from those schools
Gotcha.
meet up to watch the games together.
That's cool.
And there's a camaraderie built, obviously, around your school, but then around the SEC.
Right.
Yeah.
Because, in Manhattan, there's not a lot of college football news.
Right,
right,
So
right.
there's
Yeah.
even a community with that. So these are all just examples of people who find things that they get to be a part of
Yeah.
that's bigger than themselves, that they experience with others. And there's something that happens to us at a soul level when
Yeah.
when we participate in those kind of things.
That's exactly right. And I'll tell the story, then we'll kind of jump into our questions. Back when Christy and I were dating, she did a travel nursing stint for about 3 months out in Los Angeles. And she was sitting out on her balcony. We were talking on the phone. And I hear this collective just like yell of anguish. I said, "What was that?" She goes, "Oh, the Lakers must have lost."
Yeah,
like
yeah.
literally, it was that big of a deal. And so I loved the video clips that you showed showing that community. So we'll go ahead and kind of jump into today. I'm going to read this because I want to make sure that I get it right. You had a statement at the start of your message, and what you said was, "We all need to be a part of something bigger than ourselves." That's what we've been talking about, where we experience community with others that will outlive us and last for all eternity. And you said that the church is the only thing that really fits that description. So can we just kind of unpack that for a minute?
Yeah, so the first part of that statement is something that I think everybody can identify with.
Sure.
It's when you start adding those phrases at the end.
Right.
We all want our lives to matter. We all want our lives to count. That doesn't mean that we all want to be famous or we all want, history to remember our names. I'm not talking about that.
Right.
I'm just talking about we want our lives to matter.
Yeah.
We talk about that a lot around here. Sometimes it's not till someone gets to the end of their life that they realize the importance of that. So it's good to talk to people who are kind of, in the fourth quarter, so to speak, of their
Wow.
life. They'll
Yeah.
give you a lot of good perspective. So you don't want to spend your life on things that don't really matter. You don't want to succeed at things that ultimately don't matter. You want to focus your effort, your energy into things that matter. But when you do that as a part of the church, a part of God's people, redeemed, rescued, and saved by Jesus Christ, anything you do with the church will last forever because the church is the only thing that will last forever. The church is nothing more than people who have been saved by Jesus Christ. We believe that's how you get to heaven. You don't get to heaven on your own merits. You don't get
Right.
to hear, I did a funeral a few weeks ago for a really good guy, lived a really good life. And I shared at his funeral. That's not why he's in heaven.
That's right.
We talked about a lot of good things he did today at his funeral. That's not why he's in heaven. He's in heaven because he accepted Jesus' perfection in his place.
Right.
And so we believe that's how you get to heaven. Well, the only people who get to heaven then are people who've been rescued, redeemed, and saved by Jesus Christ. Salvation's available to everyone.
Right.
You've got to choose to accept it. And so that's why we can say with confidence and accuracy that anything that we do with the church will last forever.
Right.
And there is a correlation between the things we do in our lifetime here and the rewards and the crowns and a whole bunch of other stuff that we can study and try to understand
Right.
that we will experience for all eternity. And I did a series on heaven. Y'all remember that?
Yeah,
It's been a
absolutely.
while ago,
Yeah.
but we talked about that in a past teaching series. And so you're not ever wasting your time, effort, energy, or resources when you're serving and doing things associated with the church.
Right.
It will last forever.
Yeah, it reminds me of that, what was it, the movie Gladiator, where he says the things we do in life echo into eternity.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the church, what I hear you saying is like, that's 100% true. The things that we do echo into eternity, into heaven.
What a great movie.
Oh,
That
yeah,
was
it's a
great
fantastic movie.
fantastic
Absolutely.
movie. So speaking of serving, you said that serving replenishes our soul. When you're looking at it, it kind of looks counterintuitive.
Right.
Like, so how does serving replenish our soul?
I think there are people who could go to the most expensive vacation resort in the world, which that'd be fun to research.
Disney.
Like, let's try to figure
Right
that
now,
out.
yeah.
Try to figure that out. Somebody get on that. Use the old Google. What is the most expensive vacation I could take for 7 days somewhere on this planet?
Oh my gosh.
All right, so
It's Disney.
ultimate luxury.
100%.
No, I don't know. They've got those little huts like in Bora Bora.
Yeah,
out in the
yeah,
ocean.
on the water.
Yeah, that's probably not
Okay.
cheap.
All
you
right.
know?
Yeah.
So
Sure.
as pastors, we don't look into that. But
Right.
I would
We do
imagine
Disney,
that
though.
would cost you a lot of money.
Right.
So where I'm going with all this is like you could do that. You could find the most relaxing place in the world. You could spend all of this money. And you could go and you could do the trip. And there's no guarantee that your soul would experience any type of replenishment. You can't buy that.
Right.
You can try to create relaxation. You can try to get away from it all. You can try to enjoy the view. You can try to escape the hustle and bustle. We got all the phrases down.
Right.
But being replenished at a soul level requires a different approach. So what's interesting about how God wired us is trying to get away and trying to escape, while it might provide momentary relaxation, does nothing for us at a soul level. But when we actually do what God created us to do, that replenishes us. So God did not create us to consume, and God did not give us gifts for ourselves. God created us to contribute, and he gave us gifts for the benefit of others.
Right.
So when you cooperate with that, when you do what he actually created you to do, your soul experiences fulfillment and replenishment because you're actually doing what God created you to do.
Right.
It'd be like if, a guitar, Matt's Mr. Guitar here. So you got a guitar. What's the guitar made for? It's made to be played,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, that's the whole idea.
Yeah.
If the guitar just sits there, like it looks great, but it's not being put to use. There's far too many Christians that are kind of like a guitar hanging on a wall.
Right.
Like they're not being
Right.
put to use.
Right.
And then they're wondering, why do I, feel like and then we focus our time, effort, and energy on temporary things. So let me give you a formula for anxiety and a formula for a lack of purpose and a formula for all the things. Make your life all about you. Don't ever serve others and waste your gifts.
Yeah.
And that's where you'll be left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So many times when we talk about serving, it turns into how can we get people to do things?
Right.
That's not what we're talking about.
Right.
We're
Right.
talking about
Yeah.
actually functioning in a way God created you. Is it work? Yes. Will it leave you tired? Yes. But will it leave you fulfilled? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I don't want people to miss out on that.
Yeah.
Because I think it's how God created us.
Yeah.
Yeah, an example of that I've seen in my own life, I think about like those weekends where, I sit around and do nothing all weekend. And at the end of it, I'm just like, well, that was a waste. Versus like, yeah, there's weekends where I'm off work, but, work in the yard, fix things around the house, get it. At the end of that, there's a contentment and a peace and a feeling of real accomplishment, that I have at the end of that weekend versus just feeling like I ate a bunch of empty calories. You know what I'm saying? Like it's the difference in
You
that.
feel good in the moment.
That's
I
right.
mean, if you spend 65 minutes in our children's ministry, I'm not telling you it's going to be the easiest 65
Right.
minutes of your life.
Right.
It's going to require some energy, and it's going to require, some things from you.
Right.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Every single one of those kids have a name. Every single one of those kids have a story. And when you get to know those kids and you get to know their stories,
Yeah.
you're going to leave replenished. Morgan told me a story that happened in our children's ministry this past Sunday, that she was helping out in one of the rooms. I think it was with fourth graders. It might have been fifth graders. A lot of folks are traveling this time of year.
Sure.
So she had jumped in to make sure that the regular leader wasn't by themselves, because there was a bunch of them in the
Right.
room. And at the end of the time, the leader said, would anybody like to, close us in prayer? And simultaneously, 2 fourth grade boys raised their hands. You know how hard it is to get a fourth grade boy to
Yeah,
pray?
no kidding.
Oh, yeah.
And both of them, Morgan said, prayed like unbelievable prayers. And so Morgan said it was really cool when their parents came to pick them up. Like Morgan told the parents, like,
Yeah.
listen, I just want to share with you like what. And she said the parents were just like so excited to hear that had happened, and that their sons had volunteered to pray. And so the people who are serving in the children's ministry, guess what? They got to experience that.
That's so cool.
And that replenished them.
Yeah.
That makes it all worthwhile.
Sure.
When you see a kid who maybe at the beginning of the school year would never have been bold enough to pray in front of his friends,
Right.
but now he will, and he takes it seriously, and he wants to do it.
Right.
So, that is replenishment. The people who are experiencing serving those kids, they're being replenished. Does it work? Of course. Does it take energy? Yes.
Right.
Is every Sunday amazing? Probably not.
Right.
But are they replenished? Yes.
Yeah.
They're replenished.
That's right.
And so, they would say that's their favorite part of the week.
Yeah.
Morgan told me about another couple in our church who they had kind of said, just put us down whenever you need us to serve. And yesterday, this past Sunday, they caught Morgan and Kendall in the lobby and like, they're like, just put us down every week.
That's
it was one of those
awesome.
things like,
That's awesome.
they were enjoying it so much.
Right.
They're like, we want to keep doing this every week.
Yeah.
So every week they'll be serving at a service and they'll be, worshiping with us at another service. Well, what's motivating them? It's not because somebody, quote unquote, needed them.
Right.
It's because of what they're experiencing as they serve, right? So that's what we're talking about with this.
Okay.
Yeah. So, Jesus is our example. And, I want to talk about, you gave an example yesterday how in Scripture Jesus served his disciples by washing their feet. Do we see some other examples of Jesus serving, and what's the significance of that?
Oh, man. Well, you're asking me. I mean, how much can I nerd out? So, his whole life.
Yeah.
So we take for granted what it actually means that Jesus stepped out of heaven and stepped down to earth. He, as a light, stepped into darkness. He, as perfection, stepped into brokenness. All of Jesus' life is a picture of serving. So we see this best communicated in the Bible in Philippians chapter 2, where Paul says, Jesus, being like God, did not, and I may not be quoting this directly, did not consider equality with God something to be grasped, but willingly emptied himself. That's a loaded verse.
Yeah.
So what's he emptying himself of? Well, he's emptying himself of the independent use of his divine attributes, being all present, all knowing, and all powerful. Jesus had all of those things at his disposal for his entire life here on earth. He just willingly chose not to exercise them out of humility. Because if he had exercised them, no one has the choice of whether or not to worship him.
Right.
You just fall on your face.
Yeah.
Which is what we will all do one day when we actually see him, where he is not withholding the independent use of those divine attributes.
Yeah.
So when you get to see Jesus one day in heaven, I trust me, you will not be asking him questions.
Right.
You will not be getting answers to your greatest Bible trivia questions.
Yeah.
You'll be falling flat on your face out of just the sheer glory that you will be in the presence of. Okay. So all of Jesus's life is a picture of serving and humility. Now, here's the most challenging part of that Philippians chapter 2 passage. That is actually not the point of the verse. That great theological truth is framed under this phrase where Paul says, your attitude should be like Christ, who? Then he unpacks that statement. So he's literally using that as an example for us.
Right.
And what Paul's basically trying to say is, you ain't going to outserve Jesus.
Right.
So when you compare your level of humility to that, how you doing, big boy? That's
exactly.
kind of Paul's way
listen
of
here,
saying
big
that.
deal. God set aside his, divine
So this
attributes.
is what Jesus did.
Right.
Your attitude should be the same.
Wow.
That's a very challenging passage when we consider its implications. And so humility and serving is really the only option we're given.
Wow.
As Christ followers.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we live in a fame-obsessed culture that has permeated the walls of our churches, and fame and fortune and notoriety and all of the things have kind of become part of the Christian subculture, and it's easy for us to forget. No. We're the ones that have actually been called to serve.
Wow.
We're not called to make a name for ourselves. We're called to make a lot of the name of Jesus.
Right.
Yeah.
So we do that through humility. We do that through serving, but that's very countercultural, and unfortunately, it's very countercultural in a lot of churches. So if we want to follow the way of Jesus, there's really only one road to take, and it's the road of serving.
Man, that's really good. So yesterday you talked a little about SHAPE. Now, for those who have attended our services and have been listening to our podcast, they've heard that before. They've heard that acronym before. But for those that don't know what that is, what is SHAPE? What's the idea of SHAPE? And how do we find the best place for us to serve?
Did y'all grow up in a house that had ESPN2? As a part of the cable package?
Yeah.
So when ESPN2 first started, I don't know if it was just the season of life that I was in, but every other show was like an exercise show. There was like that one dude that was like on the cliff of the ocean.
Right. Yeah.
You remember? And he was so when you say SHAPE, that's what comes to mind.
Who was the guy
shows.
with the gazelle? Remember the gazelle? That guy?
Yeah, all of them. Well,
yeah.
I mean, and none of them
I
are
guess I
better
didn't watch
than Richard
enough.
Simmons.
Right.
Back in the day. That's
Wow.
like probably 70s and 80s stuff.
He had his own channel.
So, get in shape with. Okay, so that's not what we're talking
Right.
about.
But
But I
not.
do remember all of those shows. I can't remember that guy's name. Somebody's going to have to find that guy's name.
We'll
But it was
Google it.
always on. And for
Yeah.
some reason, it was like Saturday mornings.
Tony
was
something?
this,
I
We
think
need a
the time it
fact
was
checker.
on.
Like,
we do.
Where's Harley?
Harley?
Where's Harley at?
Can't he drop out of college and get back here and help us
We
out?
need like a little screen up there.
All
It's
right,
like, this
so
is what
SHAPE
it is.
is an acronym. that has nothing to do with the exercise shows. It's just
ESPN2.
spiritual gifts, heart, what you're passionate about, abilities, personality, experience. If you can kind of begin to get some insight into those 5 areas of your life, it'll probably point you in the direction to serve.
Sure.
I'm thinking of a couple in our church that we were hanging out with a few months ago, and they were telling me a little bit of their story, and I know them pretty well, but some of the things they were even telling about their story, my immediate response, not because I'm the pastor of Vaughn Forest Church, but just because I'm listening to them articulate their shape without knowing they're articulating their shape. I literally said to them, you guys would be amazing investing in teenagers. I mean, what you just shared, do you know how many teenagers need to hear that? And they would listen to you because you're not their parents.
Right.
And you're actually really cool people. And, and they were like, seriously? That's never crossed our mind. They didn't even realize what they had to offer the next generation, but not probably, 4-year-olds or first graders. The stuff they were talking about, I'm like, man, that's what teenagers need to hear right now. That's all we mean. When you think about who you are and your experiences and how you're wired, usually there's a pretty good connection there with, I could probably do that in the church.
Right.
I mean, obviously, if some abilities are easier to spot than others, if you can sing or play an instrument. But then sometimes people think, I don't really have anything to offer because I can't sing, I can't play an instrument, I can't teach, I don't have a big personality. No, listen, you're the only person that's ever been created like you. And DNA tells us that. And so if you don't do what God created you to do, it won't get done. You're the only person he ever created that could get it done. And so that's the beauty of the church. As we do the things God created us to do, equipped us to do, wired us to do, his purposes get accomplished through us, which is pretty awesome. So shape is just one way to try to gain insight into that process.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. We're real practical around here. What methods, tracks, classes do you want to call it, where folks can come here at Vaughn Forest Church and help discover their shape for service?
I think the best way to discover your shape is just start serving. Just start serving. So, the easiest way to just start serving at Vaughn Forest is through any of our guest services teams.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, you could serve coffee this Sunday.
Yeah.
You could pass out a bulletin this Sunday. You could be a greeter this Sunday.
Yeah.
We can get you plugged into that pretty quickly. Now, if you want to join the worship team or the production team, there's a little bit more of a process.
Sure.
If you want to join the children's ministry team, there's a background check. There's a little bit more of a process.
Right.
Yeah.
But anybody at any time can start serving.
Yeah.
Anybody at any time could drop by our office and say, I've got an hour, I've got 2 hours, how can I help? We got some stuff waiting for you,
that's
okay?
right.
Yeah.
So you don't have to, quote unquote, go to a class or get approved or get a certificate or all the things. However, part of our quote unquote membership process, I think we call it our next steps class.
Yes.
We've got 2 of them, is we have like a whole section in that class where we do a deep dive into this.
Gotcha.
So it's part of what the teacher goes over in that setting with shape and spiritual gifts and an inventory of all of the current ministries that are available to help make someone make the process for someone who's in that class a little easier to connect.
Sure.
What's interesting about that whole philosophy and strategy is I would say 75% of the people who are in that membership class are already serving.
Yeah.
So for us, membership isn't how you get started. Membership sometimes is the culmination of what you've already been doing, and now you just want to formalize it.
That's right.
So we do have some things that we offer, and then from time to time we teach on it. From time to time we'll have a life group that focuses a little bit more on it. But the best way to figure all of that out is just get started.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And that kind of segues into my next question, which you talked for a bit yesterday in the church how there can be either a contributor culture or a consumer culture. So I want to talk about the difference between those and kind of what that means.
Yeah, I mean, what's in it for me? Like that's the question that a lot of us have front of mind.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how our culture functions in society and marketing and advertising and all the things. And so I'm not trying to say like, we're you bunch of terrible people. I'm just saying, can we all like acknowledge that? We all have a little bit of that in us. The challenge is a lot of us then bring that to the church. What can the church do for me? How can the church serve me? How can the church meet my needs? The church isn't doing things the way I would like to do them, okay? Well, that's not really the purpose of the church.
Right.
So if you're starting from the wrong starting point, it's going to be challenging for anything else to make sense.
Right.
Okay. So the purpose of the church is to allow you the opportunity to use the gifts God's given you to continue to be about the work of the kingdom.
Yeah.
And the work of the kingdom is what? Jesus gave us the words to seek and save those who are lost.
Right.
Well, those who are lost. I came to do the will of the Father, to seek and save those who are lost.
Yeah.
So our church is on a mission to seek and save those who are lost. Discipleship is nothing more than believers who are growing in their faith as they seek to accomplish that mission.
Right.
So, the church is not about what it can do for you. The church is your opportunity to contribute to the overall mission and vision of the church.
Right.
Now, as you do that, and here's what makes it fun, your insights are going to be really, really useful.
Right.
Yeah.
The people around here who serve are the people who have the best ideas because they're on the front lines making it happen.
Right.
And so when they make a suggestion to Matt or you or me or kids ministry or student ministry, they're usually really good suggestions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're right in the middle of it. They're one of us. They're on the
Right.
team. We're all doing this together. That's different than someone who from the starting point is like, well, this just isn't what I'm looking for. This doesn't
Right.
meet my need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we try to be super upfront about that as a church. One of the things we talk about this at Discover Vaughn Forest.
Yeah.
So people who are new, they come to Discover Vaughn Forest, and we're basically like, let me tell you who we are as a church.
Right.
Like if you're going to hang around here for a while, this is going to be how we roll.
Yeah.
And we're going to try to get you to start serving, not because we need more volunteers, but because we believe you're missing out if you don't take Jesus up on his word.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Our role is
Yeah.
to help you in that process.
Gotcha.
And the people who are like, yes, this is what I'm looking for. At my last church, all the pastors did everything, and I never felt like I get to do anything. There might be somebody from time to time. I haven't had somebody tell me this, but maybe at some point someone comes up to us afterwards and goes, well, you guys just don't really seem to care what we think about. I'm looking for a church that meet my needs. Well, I would probably be like, unpack that for me a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah.
Maybe they mean I just want to know that people care about me or they'll pray
Right.
for me. It might,
Yeah.
oh yeah, we
Of
do that.
course, yeah.
But
Yeah.
it might be, at my last church, I met with the pastor once a week and made sure he ran his schedule by me. And it's like, well, Chad does that at our church. So, he'd be more than happy to do that with you every week.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
absolutely.
So
Email me at matt.collins at
I'm being
vaughnforest.com.
facetious.
Yeah.
Now, let me tell you why
Oh, boy.
I speak so openly about that. I grew up in church. So I know how easy it is to have that attitude because I've had that attitude.
Sure.
We all slip into that mindset from time to time. This isn't what I want. This isn't meeting my need. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to sound all high and mighty. Like I have to check my spirit. Matt and I talk about this sometimes. Some of my favorite worship songs that I wish we would sing aren't really the best worship songs to sing in a worship service
Right.
because they have like 27 verses and they're 11 minutes long.
Right.
And they're hard to learn.
Right.
And the goal of leading worship, Matt can speak to this better than me, is to actually lead people to participate in the
Yeah.
worship.
Right.
Well, if the song's too complex, the participation goes down.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But I could be like, this church isn't singing the songs I like, and get upset about that,
Right.
So we all have to make sure we're not bringing that attitude. And we can bring that attitude
Yeah.
if
Big
we're
time.
not careful.
Yeah.
So it's not just the people in the church, it's also the pastors.
Right. Yeah. I had a conversation the other day about how tough it can be for a pastor to go at another church and just worship. And, because, we're always looking to improve our church, and you sit here and you see some, if there's flaws, and I don't even want to call them flaws, but just things you would do
Different
differently.
things,
That's right.
yeah.
And it can be really tough. And
You're
so
like,
I
well,
always have to check my heart, when I'm going other places. It's like, God, I'm here to worship you, and I'm here to, receive what you have for me
The
today.
people who make Vaughn Forest move forward are the people, they are not consumers, they're contributors, but they
Right.
have all the best ideas.
Yeah.
We don't really have a lot of the good ideas around here.
Right.
It's the people who call Vaughn Forest their home. They're the ones that have the good ideas. We have empowered them and mobilized them
Yeah.
Right.
accordingly. And our church is bearing fruit from that.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
So, we don't control this thing. This is Jesus's church. But the people who are making it happen, they have the right heart.
That's right.
And that matters to us. They're moving with the right purpose and the right intention and the right heart.
Yeah. So yesterday you talked about the idea of a real servant. What makes somebody a real servant versus a not real servant?
Well, if we want to go New Testament, it's hard to really unpack it because it doesn't fit our culture at all. But, the phrase that Paul used in several of his letters was bondservant. And, again, this is first century Roman Empire.
Right.
It's a little different than the world we live in now. But a bondservant in the first century Roman Empire was someone who had been given the opportunity to no longer be a servant, but chose to continue to work for their master.
Right.
So they had the freedom to go away, but instead they said, no, I'm willingly choosing to be a servant. That's the picture Paul uses for us, is choosing to serve. We're not serving because we're obligated. We're serving from a heart of gratitude.
Right.
Okay.
So a bond servant, Jesus saved me, okay? And he is the Lord of my life. I'm serving because I want to.
Okay.
So when I'm serving like Jesus served, there are some characteristics, and I stole Rick Warren's list because if Rick wrote it, it's going to be hard to do it better than that.
Uncle Rick's list.
So Uncle Rick helps us out quite a bit.
That's
but
right.
A real servant then acts accordingly. That doesn't sound like the type of person who's looking for notoriety. And I talked about that in our message, and I would give you their names, but they would be upset with me.
Right.
The people who make the biggest difference in our church, most of the people of On Forest don't know who they are.
Yeah.
And they like it that way.
Yeah.
They're not looking for a spotlight or notoriety or fame. That's a real servant. They're dependable. They're trustworthy. It's not about them. It's not about them accomplishing their agenda. It's about them saying, how can I be a part of the team, and what do you need me to do?
Right.
Yeah. That's what a real servant looks like. And when you see them, you know it right away.
Yeah.
That's good, man. Yeah.
It's not about what serving can do for them. It's about how they can serve and do things for others.
Yeah.
So those are the characteristics of a real servant.
They're a real blessing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I loved how you introduced to the congregation yesterday the ministry ladder. And, for those of us on staff, we've utilized this ministry ladder for, over a year.
I thought
at
the
least.
ladder was going to get busted out again.
Yeah.
The generosity
the
ladder.
generosity
ladder.
Different ladder.
Different ladder, but I thought the ladder was going to
Big
make
fans
an
of
appearance
ladders
again.
around here.
It was behind the
Absolutely.
stage. I thought it was coming out today.
Absolutely.
Sorry we let you down,
Yeah,
Matt.
we'll have to bring
okay.
back a little mountain climbing Hardy to go up the
there you
ministry
go.
ladder. But no,
The ministry ladder.
I love the ministry ladder, and I love the process. So can we just walk through that real quick? What the ministry ladder is, kind of the different rungs on it, and kind of our how folks move up that ministry ladder.
It's just a tool. It's a tool to help provide clarity. So if we tell everybody, hey, you got to serve, Jesus served, he's wired you to serve, let's go serve, 1, 2, 3, go team. That's not helping anybody.
Right.
It's actually malpractice for a doctor to diagnose without prescribing.
Interesting.
That's malpractice.
Okay.
So if you're a doctor, the diagnosis is key, but the prescription, here's what you now
Right.
need to do,
Right.
is actually what will help heal the patient.
Right.
So many times in churches, we're guilty of malpractice. We diagnose the problem. We're consumers instead of contributors. We don't use the gifts God gave us.
Someone should really do something about that.
Let's pray and go home.
Yeah,
Amen. And we
right.
never give a proper prescription of here's now what to do.
Yeah.
So the ladder is just a way to visually see how you can put these things into practice, hold yourself accountable, and submit yourself to the process of being held accountable by someone else.
Gotcha.
So, I'm on this team. Someone else is leading this team. I'm a member of this team. I'm going to do what they tell me I'm supposed to do.
Right.
Awesome. That's a great place to start on any team in our church. But then the longer you serve, you may get to a place where you've demonstrated all the characteristics that we're talking about today, and somebody taps you on the shoulder and says, hey, why don't you lead this team?
Right.
Next thing you know, you're leading the team. Yeah. And we only want to elevate the people into leadership who are modeling the things that we want modeled.
Right.
So whatever you elevate, those attitudes and behaviors and things will now get replicated over and over in your church.
Right.
Yeah.
So we elevate the people into greater leadership opportunities that are the people who were never looking to be elevated into greater leadership
Right.
opportunities,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And this ladder is just quite simply a way that we can do that in a pretty complex organization. So there's a lot of people around here, and we've got services, and we've got a lot of different ministry teams, and if we don't have clarity on this, it's just going to be one big jumbled mess.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's just simply a tool, but I would challenge you, if you call Vaughn Forest home, like, where are you on this? You should be able to say, that's the team I'm on. This is the position I have. These are the responsibilities. This is the ministry leader I report to. And if you're not able to say that, that's okay. But let's get that figured out over the next 90 days.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's get that figured out over the next 90 days. Like, you need to be mobilized
Right.
as a part of your own spiritual growth but as a part of being a part of something bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
What God is up to here at Vaughn Forest Church. And we don't want you to miss out on that.
That's right.
Yeah.
And this is just simply a way for us to have clarity on that.
Yeah.
And it's also a way to empower the people in our church to have clarity as they communicate with us.
Sure.
So let's say you're talking to somebody and they go, well, you know, Chad, I'm actually a leader in the children's ministry. And you're like, oh, that's fantastic.
Right.
You know, or someone in the children's ministry approaches Matt and says, you know, I've been leading in children's ministry and that commitment ends on Memorial Day. When's your next audition? I would like to try out for the worship team.
Yeah.
And Matt goes, well, that'd be fantastic.
Right.
So what is that person? They're empowered to move from one team to the next
Right.
without anything being weird.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
sometimes, you know, people think in churches like, well, I can't leave that team and go
Right.
because that's
Started
gonna,
here, I
that'll hurt
gotta
their
end
feelings.
here.
And it's, no.
Yeah.
Like if someone left Morgan's team after their term was up to start serving on your team,
Yeah.
Morgan sees that as a win.
Absolutely.
Right.
So
Yeah.
so it also empowers the members of our church to have clarity with where they decide they want to serve and how they want to move around and,
Right.
and even how they communicate with us.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it works both ways, and it's just simply a tool. It's the best one that I've found so far.
Right.
And so we're using it. If we find something that's better one day, maybe we switch
we'll
to
use that.
that.
Right.
But for us right now, that's just the way we're doing it.
Yeah, and you know, I want to point out a couple things about what you just said there. First, you know, if someone there's never any jealousy. There's never any like we are all on the same team here at Vaughn Forest Church. So if someone's serving on my team, they go, "Hey, I really think I want to serve with the worship team." Go. I mean, we'll help you get connected. And like, you know, if someone comes up to me and says, "Hey, you know, we're interested," like we are all on the same team. We want to help each other out. The other thing that I want to point out, and this actually happened Sunday after the second service, I had a young man come up to me and say, "Hey, I'm really interested in tech. I'd love to get plugged in." If anyone is listening to this and they are interested in serving in any capacity of Vaughn Forest Church, please understand when you come up and say to one of us, "Hey, I want to get plugged into service," it's like the greatest thing that we can hear.
It's on, man. We're getting you involved.
Absolutely. And so, like, if anyone's nervous about that, like, don't be nervous. Like, we will absolutely help you get plugged in and serving.
And I think sometimes, I'll brag on our teams here for a second. I have the easiest job on Sundays. I mean, I preach.
I don't know about that.
No. Listen, I've been in ministry for 22 years. I've only been a lead pastor for the last 6. Okay, so for a long time, I was
done it more than we have.
I was doing all of the other work, so I know how much work it takes to pull off a Sunday. More of my work happens during the week, you know, because preparing for the sermon is hard. You know,
Yeah.
preaching the sermon's fun. But let me brag on everybody here for a second. Our teams do such a great job that I think sometimes we give off the impression we've got it covered.
Oh.
I think
Yeah.
sometimes we get off the impression we don't need you.
Oh.
We've already got such great people doing such great things. And I think we have to be mindful that sometimes doing things well can unintentionally leave the impression that no one else is needed.
Yeah.
This is why need for us is a 4-letter word. Like we never ask the question, do we need more people?
Right.
That's not what we've been called to. There's not a verse in the New Testament that tells us, hey, figure out your needs and then go meet them.
Right.
That's
Yeah,
not in there,
yeah.
okay? But what we are called to do is equip the saints for the works of ministry.
Right.
So instead of asking the question, how many people do we need? Here's the question we ask: how many people can we mobilize? How many people can we mobilize? So if by some crazy occurrence somebody ever came into my office and went, we did it. Yeah. We actually filled every volunteer position here at Vaughn Forest Church. We don't need anybody else. I would instantly create 100 new positions.
Right.
Just make stuff up.
That's right.
You know, because we would now no longer be functioning as a church.
Right.
We would
Yeah.
now no longer be fulfilling the purpose. So we will never get to a place where we go, well, we've got it covered.
Right.
So if we've given you that impression, we'll own it and apologize for it. But you can jump in and be a part of that.
That's right. Yeah.
So the more people who are mobilized, we can have, you know, like rotations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And give people breaks.
Yes.
And allow you to take a trip when you want to, you know.
Right.
So that's kind of the goal. We want people to be on a team, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have to do everything every single week.
Right.
But if we've given the impression that we quote unquote don't need you, let me apologize for that. And I think it's an unintentional consequence of doing things well.
Interesting.
Yeah. Man, we need to mobilize some folks.
Yeah, that's
There you
right.
go.
That's right.
Yeah, because, you know, if y'all walked over in my area Sunday, it looked like a spacecraft.
Right, yeah. Matt looked like a DJ up there on the stage. He was
doing a lot of
different
things
stuff.
Sunday
Right.
morning.
DJ
So,
Matt.
I need to mobilize some folks. Is
That's
what
right.
I'm hearing.
Absolutely.
Well, you had a few challenges pop up last week.
Yeah, that's true.
But you
but
handled those well.
Yeah. But speaking of serving, we've been speaking a lot about that. But there's a bunch of opportunities coming up. Easter's 2 weeks away. So let's talk about the opportunities that are available to serve that we have.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just asking if you call Vaughn Forest home to do two things. First, invite somebody to Easter.
Right.
Second, find somewhere to serve on Easter. For a lot of you, that might be you serve at the service you attend. So, if you're going to be a greeter, you get there early and you greet at the doors. I don't know, 10, 15 minutes after the service starts, you come on in and you attend the service, For others, that might mean you attend a service and then you serve for the entirety of another service, But if you call Vaughn Forest home, find somewhere to serve on Easter. And we made a lot of next steps available. I think we'll post those on our website or something. So if you missed the message, you can see what those are. But whether you serve in the parking lot or you serve as a greeter or you help pass out bulletins, help walk families to the appropriate room after they check their kids, all the things.
Right.
We've had a number of people, I mentioned the number of kids that we're expecting. Morgan told me this morning, which is awesome. It just shows me who our church is. I mean, her phone's been blowing up.
That's so
a bunch
cool.
of people who they're already on the kids serving team. Just for whatever reason, they had taken this semester off.
Sure.
And they're like, "Hey, we're in. Let me know.
That's cool.
Put me where you need me." So, and so she's doing that. So I feel like we've got a pretty good plan. But if you missed out kind of on that call yesterday, you can still jump in and still
absolutely.
serve that day.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
And kind of relation, talking about Easter being only a couple weeks away, or maybe a week out, last week, depending on when you're listening to this.
A week and a half.
It wasn't
Week
it
and a
great?
half,
A couple weeks away. I want to talk a little bit about the night of worship and baptism that we have coming up, and we talked about it this morning. One of our staff meetings, we mentioned the baptisms we have lined up, and what an incredible night.
Yeah.
That's gonna be. So you guys, I'll ask y'all, what's that night gonna look like? And if folks are interested in getting baptized, what can they do with that?
A lot of music and a lot of baptism.
Yeah. So Matt and his team have done a fantastic job. I mean, planning all of this out.
Sure.
You talk about being replenished. I think that would be the best word to describe how you'll feel after leaving this.
Right.
So we're going to worship.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not going to be like over-programmed or super fancy. We're going to do what we said we're going to do.
Right.
We're going to worship. We're going to baptize a few folks. I'm going to, I'm going to just speak for a second about the idea that we're gathering on the Thursday night before Easter. This is the night Jesus gathered with his disciples before he was arrested. And we'll talk about that for a second. But I think it's 5 or 7 minutes. It's not like a mini sermon or anything like that. But we just want to, worship as a church family.
Yeah.
And so I think it's going to be a great opportunity to do that. And if you, for whatever reason, you haven't been baptized and that's something you want to do, there's plenty of time that you can still reach out and let us know. And we'd love to baptize you that night and celebrate. So it's going to be a really good celebration.
So that's the Thursday before Easter. That's April 14th from 6 to about 7:30 p.m. that night.
And we'll go ahead and start right at 6.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you're running late, whatever, that's cool. Just come on in whenever you can get there.
And we have childcare available for children first grade and under, correct?
Yeah.
They don't necessarily have to go to that, but if you'd like to,
if you
drop
want
your
to
kids
check
off
them
there.
in, you can. If you want to bring them in,
Yeah.
you can.
Right.
So I got 3. 2 of mine will be in there. My kindergarten will be in the child care.
Right.
He'd make it through about 2 songs.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're going to let him.
Mr. Matt is singing too long.
Yeah, that's right.
We'll let him enjoy the child care.
Yeah, and then Easter, obviously, April 17th, Sunday morning at 9:30 or 11 a.m. And again, we want to get you plugged up, serving, worship. It's going to be an incredible time, and I'm really looking forward to everything that's going to happen.
Yeah.
That weekend, that Thursday, that Sunday. But this Sunday, we will continue our Replenish series and actually be wrapping it up this Sunday. So we're looking forward to that. And so I think that's a good place for us to kind of wrap up this conversation as well. So gentlemen, thank you so much for sharing today. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Again, really enjoying the series. And I think it's so timely, for so many of us, it's spring, rejuvenation, and we're able, looking at what God's word has to say about replenishing our souls. So on behalf of Adam Bishop, Matt Collins, and myself, thank you so much for tuning in, and we will catch you guys next time.